Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from sogo-kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of the Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Good morning, Charlie. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. How are things in New York?
Okay, good. It's 7 a.m. here in New York, and it's 8 p.m. in Japan.
Yes.
Very early podcast for us, for me.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah, well, I know. I haven't slept, and I flew back from Vegas yesterday, and I have to go to Wisconsin tomorrow. So,
are you going after Duke Rufus's gym?
Yes, because we have two new Japanese fighters coming in for those ABEMA TV show stuff. So, and there's a Showtime FC right on the day after. So I'm going to check that show out and come back.
I have a random question about that ABEMA show. So, when they film it, how long is it usually till they release it? Do you think a couple months or?
Well, I mean, case of Itsuki and Naoki Hirata, it got released in less than a month, right? So,
right.
After that, we actually had the two guys who were supposed to go to Sanford MMA, but he got injured. So one of them got injured, so we had to postpone that. So we had a little bit of gap after those first two fighters, but now we have four fighters already confirmed to go to three different teams. So so next one up is Duke Rufus Sports, and we got the Syndicate, John Wood, and and what else we got? Jesus, I forgot one more. Yeah, we got one more coming. Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting, you know?
Perfect.
Yeah. Anyway, so
content on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I know, and it's too bad it's not really getting too many viewers, not yet. But you know, hopefully for the hardcore fans, or at least the fighters in Japan who's interested, you know.
Definitely.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but that ABEMA thing, that MMA training abroad, we had a lot of applicants from professional fighters.
Oh, really?
Over 200. But the sad thing is only one female fighter applied for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I guess female fighter were not interested in going overseas. But that one female fighter, we picked it up because she was very enthusiastic about it. So we'll see that. And at the same period, actually, we have another Japanese fighter who is a mother who's coming with an 8-year-old son all the way to Vegas to train as well. So that's a good big hint for you.
Okay. I'm like, my mind is like spiraling right now as I try to think of Japanese
she has a pretty
fighters.
Good record. Her record is 7-2, and she just beat King Reina. So that's a big hint.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right. So she's coming, but she's driving from Los Angeles with an 8-year-old son because she wants to train in Vegas. So. I'm very looking forward to meet her too. You know.
Yeah, she has an impressive judo background.
Yes. But anyway, so let's get to the Rizin 37 recap. Were you there?
I was. I actually met your brother-in-law. I ran into him in the crowd. But yeah, I was there. And, it was at the Saitama Super Arena. Arrived at around noon, and. I think the overall feeling was it went very long. I think we didn't leave till after 9 o'clock, so 9 hours at the Super Arena started to drag on for a little bit, but there were some exciting fights.
Right. Go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Did you ask a question?
Sorry. Yeah. So, out of these, how many fights they had? Like 13 fights? You know,
14 fights.
14 fights, and it was 9 hour long, almost. And two last main events were female fights, you know, the super atomweight tournaments. Now, I heard that a lot of people has left before the main event.
Right. So I was kind of sitting. They didn't have anyone in the upper area of the arena. So I was kind of.
You know, here's what it is. Everybody who bought ticket A or something like that, they all got ticket S or something like that. Everybody who bought the ticket got the better seat than what they paid for, right?
Yeah, they were trying to make the venue look full, I think. So they were pushing people down.
Exactly. But how would you feel you were the actual person who bought the ticket S to begin with, right?
Well, I saw one of the notorious Japanese Twitter commentators talking about it, that ticket guy. The ticket reseller was complaining about it nonstop. So I think a lot of the Japanese hardcore fans weren't a fan.
You mean the president of T1?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Oh, he was complaining.
Well, he said that's one of the reasons that a lot of people left mid-event was that it was a bunch of people that just had cheap tickets that weren't really invested in a lot of the fighters.
You know, that's not really exactly true, though, because every time when we try to sell tickets, the cheapest ticket and the most expensive ticket goes on. I mean, it gets sold out fast.
Well, I'll tell you right now. Yeah. I was in the cheap section this time. And what I noticed was it was primarily people with a lot of family members.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was people with like 5 or 6 kids that can't blow $1,000 to go to a Rizin show, right. So they're in the cheaper seats.
Exactly. I mean, you have to understand a lot of fighters teach kids too, right? I mean, they teach classes at the gym, so kids or kids' parents, they all go together, right? I mean, you can't be spending so much money. And
well, I was laughing because it was like the opposite of a UFC show. To my left were probably 5 children under the age of 10. I don't think I've ever seen that at a UFC show. Just so many young children at an event before. It's kind of interesting, but
yeah, that's a part of the reason they start the shows in midday, right, instead of at nighttime. Because in UFC shows, as you can see, most of the shows in Vegas, nobody really was there before main card. They're all drinking, and gambling in casino, right? So by the time they get to the venue, they be all intoxicated and stuff. You know, it's completely different. You barely see any children. You know,
but back to the people leaving early, I'll say that after the Tokoro fight, conservatively, half of the people there left. And then
is that because Tokoro's popularity? I mean, I know he's very popular. I mean,
he's very popular. I actually laughed because when we arrived at the train station, they had like a piano set up, and there was this older lady sitting at the piano playing Tokoro's entrance music. So he obviously had lots of fans, but I don't think that was it. I think a bigger factor was it was a Sunday night. Saitama is not Tokyo, so everyone, like 90% of the people there commute to come to this event. Like, for example, I came from Yokohama, which is like 2 hours away.
That's true. So, people don't realize Saitama Super Arena is not in Tokyo. It's in Saitama, as you can see by their venue name, right?
Yeah, so it's super far away. Well, not super far away, but it's far away. And then the event just kept going on. Like, when the Tokoro fight happened, it was probably around like 8 o'clock at night. People had work the next day. I think people were just ready to go home.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately.
And I think the Tokoro versus Shinju was a pretty good fight, right? It was a good 3-round fight.
It was. It's a very good fight. And another factor people also don't remember is that I would say that more than like 75, 80% of people that come to the Super Arena come via the train. So a lot of them are like, hey, let's get out now before the trains are super crowded so that we can get a seat for our long ride home.
That's always the mentality, right? For the many sports fans. Like the guys who leaves after the 7th inning on the baseball game.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same mentality. And
it's real. And the fact if you go to a New Year's Eve show, that because the trains stop, they have like a time they stop traveling at. And so if you go to a New Year's Eve show, like you're on the last train and you're like packed in there like cattle. So it's a realistic fear to get in those trains.
Do they run extra trains for like when they have like events at the Saitama Super Arena? Because you're really looking at 20,000 people who's gonna come out. You know,
I don't think they run special trains because it's just
really?
I don't see JR doing anything special for a sporting event.
Well, that's too bad. But anyway, so I have to mention that Shinju, which is a client of mine, actually called me right after this fight, actually. And
really?
he it's a Japanese thing, but what it is, like we always talking about this, that he needs to finish because the problem is that he made a pro debut at age 15. So in the beginning, he still wasn't fully grown yet. So he was fighting a doubt with just, passing, getting by. So he had too many decisions in the beginning. That's the only problem about his record in terms of me talking to the UFC. So he wanted to finish this guy. That's what we talked about, many times before the fight. But again, he couldn't. So the first thing he says, "I'm very sorry." He apologized, And he he was swallowed by Tokoro. That was the exact word. He said
it was a great fight because
Mhm.
every time, like Tokoro for his age, moves his hips like a wild man. Like he's constantly trying to set up submissions.
Exactly. See, that's the point. The point that we talked about is that we cannot be fighting on his ground, and that's what happened. All Shinju did was he was able to adjust or react to every single attack by Tokoro. He was able to defend well, but that's what he did. He wasn't able to really go for his finish.
Right.
You know, he shouldn't even get into the grappling match with him. Yeah, he should stand up and try to just strike that guy out. But anyway, so he felt that because of his loss, I mean, his win by a decision, which is a loss from his point of view in terms of convincing UFC to take him, he feels that he took a little bit of step backward in this fight. You know,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know, because I have this weird idea that if he would have smashed Tokoro, it might have like upset the Japanese fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that
hero right there?
Right. So, in the fact that he had an exciting fight with Tokoro, but won, but it was still what the fans thought was an exciting fight. Right. I think this type of victory will actually build him more Japanese fans.
Oh yeah, I mean, exactly.
If that makes sense.
Exactly. That's always the argument about the Japanese fighters. Many fans in Japan feels it's probably better to fight in big shows in Japan like Rizin, so you could become a popular and earn pretty good money. Then you go to UFC, then you can take that fans with you. You know what I mean? The fans you have created through national televisions or whatever that is. And but on the other side of the coin, a lot of people fighter feels that when you get a chance, you should go there. You know, I don't care if you're 20, 21, 24, whatever, you know. And that's what has been happening in terms of the Japanese fighters in UFC. There's only a handful of Japanese guys who went there at the peak time. And guys like Gomi or, you know, Kawajiri or Yamamoto, they all went there like 5, even 10 years past peak. And I think the only 3 guys who actually went there on the peak time is Okami, Mizugaki, and Horiguchi, which they all end up being a ranker and in a title fight and stuff like that. So I agree with you in the sense that yes, this has boosted up Shinju's popularity in Japan, right? Or at least the recognition. And again, let's talk about money. I'll tell you this on the record. I know exactly how much he made on terms of purse and sponsorship and everything else. He walked out of there making at least double the money than a UFC fighter would be making on his or her first fight of the contract.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I did the calculation. Even though Yang is very weak, think that way.
yes. Yeah, you guys calculate that now.
So in that sense, he earned very good income on that fight. And
plus, it was a good high-profile match because, let's be honest, atomweight tournament aside, I feel like a lot of the Japanese people felt like this was the main event.
Yeah.
Because Tokoro, that's not putting anything against Izawa or Hamasaki. Tokoro is just that big of a legend.
He is.
Like, Tokoro
he's
been around for so long. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the people know Tokoro, period. And also, I don't know if you noticed that, but I guess he was having a little emotional problem prior to this fight. So when he was talking to 2 of his corner men on YouTube, and he started crying, even though they weren't doing anything. You know, they were saying anything that, you know, interesting. But so he was very, very emotionally unstable. So I think that's also boosted it, you know, the fans.
I will say, I saw him at the weigh-ins the day before. And so people know the actual weigh-ins happen before the televised weigh-ins. It's kind of like the UFC.
Right. In the morning.
Tokoro
weigh-ins,
he looked absolutely awful. He looked like a skeleton that walked into the room, and people didn't even recognize him. He looked like an old man. Him moving down in weight was a terrible decision.
I know. His age, cutting down, you know, I mean, it must have been so hard, you know. But he made it, and it looked like his cardio was okay, too, in that fight. So that's amazing.
So what's Shinju's plan going forward? Do you know? Or
well, in a perfect world, you know, we would be getting call from Mick and talking about the contract and stuff, but I don't think that's happening. You know, right now the contenders are going on, and like this year's contenders, let's face it, I see a guys who has like 14-1 kind of record in there. Like a lot of good fighters in there. So, but I would like to get Shinju into the regular UFC contract instead of going through a contender. So
yeah,
this year's contender is too late anyway. So would he wait for the next year? But no, I think I'm going to take it one fight at a time. And this past fight, I was able to negotiate one fight contract with no strings attached, not even exclusive matching negotiation period or matching period, none of that. He was free day after the fight. And if Rizin wants to use him again, I guess I will negotiate in that manner. So one fight per basis. Yeah, that's because in next show, let's talk about this. Is Super Rizin? I'm sorry, I made a mistake on the spelling. Yeah, Super Rizin. Which is
to be clear, there's going to be Super Rizin, which sounds like it's going to be a 5 versus 5 kind of.
Right. Okay, let's talk about that first.
That Sakakibara said is geared towards the international audience.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Rizin 38, which is also going to be on the same day.
Right.
And I believe that Bruno said that Mikuru versus Mayweather is going to be on the Rizin 38 part of the card.
No, actually, that's not true.
Okay,
Super Rizin, because what happens is like they want to gear this first 5 fights over the show towards the North American audience. Mm-hmm. So they're thinking about doing some super fights along with Mayweather and Mikuru, then take a break and then go into Rizin 38. But the pay-per-view shows and for the audience, it's the one whole show. So you don't have to buy 2 tickets, and you have to buy 2 separate pay-per-views, which means the main event of the first 5 fight card part of the show is going to be Mayweather against Mikuru.
Yeah.
And that means the Rizin needs another set of main card and main event, whatever that is, for the Rizin 38.
So Sakakibara, I think, already said that there's going to be a title fight as well. So that makes me think that Koike might actually be fighting Ushiku on this card.
Right, and also 2 semifinals for Super Heavyweight Grand Prix. Right,
that's going to be. Right. They've pretty much clearly said it's going to be Rena versus Izawa, and it's going to be Hamasaki versus Park.
I think Rena will get smoked by Izawa. I think whoever who won Hamasaki and Park is going to be a problem for Izawa, I think. But I think at the end Izawa will win this tournament,
Who knows? I mean, fighting Hamasaki for a 3rd time seems like it could be interesting.
Yeah, but again, 3rd time. Some people think 3rd time is a charm, but maybe not, right? Because she already know what Hamasaki got,
I think the issue is that for Hamasaki is Iwazawa is so young that she's getting so much better between each fight.
Yes, she's improving every single day.
Yeah.
Right, so
Rizin 38 is likely going to be, my guess, Ushiku versus Koike, and then those 2 semifinal bouts then fill out the rest of the card.
Right, but remember, the big challenge here is just like you say for the Rizin 37, a lot of people left after the Tokoro versus Shinju, right?
Right, so you need a draw.
Right, I mean, who is going to buy this ticket? And maybe half of that was a Mikuru fan, right? So Mikuru fan can just leave after the 5th fight, which is against the Mayweather, and you got another 9 or 10 fights after that. You can't have the empty arena, so you need to have a big draw. Now, who is the big draw?
On the card? Do you almost have to put Kai on the other card?
Yeah, but Kai won't be ready. Right, but Kai won't be ready because of the fist. So remember like how Horiguchi talked about soon, I think my next fight is going to be announced. He mentioned that on some YouTube Live or Instagram Live or whatever that is. I have a feeling they might put him in this show.
Yeah, because they need someone to keep the people there after the Mayweather fight.
Yeah, exactly. And the only person who could keep him there is either Tenshin or Horiguchi.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to put Horiguchi at the end of the show to make sure to keep their butts in the seats, right? So
I have a question for you. So Mikuru has kind of been creating this like group of hanger-oners on his YouTube channel, which includes fighters. It includes fighters like Yaman, Panchan Rena, Shoji, and like people like that. Do you think they'll be on this because of their association?
Maybe, with him? Right? Because they have the numbers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because Sakakibara said something in the Rising 37 press conference where he was like, oh, I feel like we have a lot to learn from breaking down, especially with how they promote their events. And so I was kind of curious to what he meant by, like, I'm worried he's going to take the bad parts of breaking down and not the good parts of breaking down.
Let me ask you, from a point of view, what's the bad part?
It's not a sport, it's just a spectacle.
Exactly. It's a sport.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a variety show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something about MMA. It is about MMA, but it's more about the auditions and all these processes, right?
No,
and
that's
it's even sanction fights or none of that. They're not even looking for that, right? So
that's the good part. The good part of breaking down is they were able to use those auditions to generate a ton of interest in the event.
It's the bottom line is that people like to see fights, right? I mean, obviously, like some kind of street fight, same kind of like 10 seconds, 15 seconds video you see on Twitter and or Instagram. They like to see something like that happening, you know?
So Rising needs to do something to generate interest.
Well, I think Mr. Sakakibara is thinking exactly the same as you are. So don't worry about it, because I had a Zoom meeting with him a couple of days after that, and he has some ideas. He did mention something like, well, it's like a breaking down. It's like a breaking down. So something like that, it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you this on the record, just like Tenshin versus Mayweather, after that fight, how many of American people are talking about Tenshin Nasukawa? Almost zero.
Well, all I remember weren't there allegations that the fight was fixed?
Yeah, exactly, right. It's like a topic of a scandal, right? Basically,
there's negative press.
Exactly, it's a negative press. On top of that, nobody remember Tenshin. They remember him as a. I mean, Tsuba is a fantastic kickboxer. He'll making a perfect boxing debut. Probably make a big wave on that type of in the boxing world too. But again, people in America don't remember who he is,
So my wife thinks, did she mention, are there rumors of Conor McGregor fighting Mayweather again?
I don't know.
That was what she was hearing about on Japanese. I think people are already looking past the Mayweather fight, even in Japan. And I will say, I took the opportunity of being at the Rising event to ask the people around me if they were interested in Mikuru and Mayweather.
Right.
And then I was at where they're doing the weigh-ins and the exercises, and there's this group of like diehard fans there.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you guys interested in the Mikuru versus Mayweather fight? And like, not only were they not interested in it, they seemed like opposed to it. They were like they were the opposite of into it.
Yeah, but I think Mikuru fans are almost like
they're different. They're not MMA fans.
Like, the guys who follows Grateful Dead concert. I'm telling you, they don't care who he fights. They just want to see him there, or winning fights or fighting, whatever, right?
So if with that in mind, do you even try to keep those people for Rising 38? Because unless there's personalities they know, I don't think they're going to be interested.
Yeah, I mean, here's really, the bottom line is right now the challenge for Rising is to come up with a profound fight cards on the second part of the show,
So what do you think about the actual Super Rising though?
Well,
Why is it special? Why is it special? Why is it geared towards the international audience?
Well, it's because first Mayweather, they believe that Mayweather has a huge selling power. So just by putting him on the top of the card, they think they can sell some decent number of pay-per-views, which I don't think so. On the record, I'll tell you this, I don't think they'll sell that well. My prediction.
Especially if they don't fix the app.
No. And on top of that,
put in Japanese addresses.
Well, I think they'll fix that. I think they'll get a broadcaster here.
Hopefully.
Or some streaming company. They have to,
Right.
And other than that, I think to accommodate the North American fans, I'll tell you this, the first part of the show, it's for the American audience. So they're not really thinking about putting a guy who's very, very famous in Japan, So it's more, he's shifting more towards spectacles, which I am against his idea, but I think he's going to go through with it,
So my question is, I saw some people in the Discord, the Rising Discord channel, and the Twitter were like, oh, maybe this means international. So they're thinking Bellator fighters versus Rising fighters. My thought process was, that's not it. This is going to be something crazy weird. Like, think more Logan Paul versus like celebrity boxing than
It's
like
close
Bellator
to
MMA
that.
fights.
Yeah, but I'll give you a hint. It's close to that concept, but there is a team versus team concept there too. So it's not Bellator, but it's team versus team concept. So that's a big hint, right? So they're thinking about that on the Super Rising. Then the Rising 38 is a regular big Rising course, but since they're gonna have like maybe enough space for like 9 fights, a lot of people, like, a lot of fighters would want to fight for that show, but I don't think they'll make it. And to go back to Mr. Makoto Shinju, for one fight contract, he would love to fight in September 25 show because it's going to be a big show. Everybody's going to be watching, and it's another opportunity for him to make money. He's injury free, So I'm trying to make that happen, but I don't think so,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think his fight is going to fit that agenda. And who are they going? Who is he going to fight? He really don't have any. He doesn't have anybody left to fight in Japan. So yeah. Super Rising is very interesting. And let's see what's going to happen. But I like say that yes, he's thinking about doing breaking down, quote quote, breaking down kind of promotions.
So I would like to be clear when I say that breaking down was good at promoting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that Rising should copy word for word what Breaking Down did.
I agree. Right? Yeah.
They just need to create some sort of engaging content that gets people interested in the event before it happens.
Exactly. But here's what it is, though. I remember Dana White said this more than 10 years ago, that the competitors of UFC is all the entertainment on Saturday night. So in that concept, even breaking down or concert or any of that, there are a lot of things that the rising promoter can learn from it, right? In terms of marketing and PR. So yeah, sure, of course, it makes sense. And I'm telling you something very, very interesting. I was able to spend time with Mr. Kyohei Hagiwara in Vegas because he showed up as a corner man.
I saw he was there with Kinoshita, right? They posted some pictures.
Kinoshita was there for just a production for Contenders. He was just there for one day just to do video shoots, kinds of stuff. But anyway, so this is what he told me, Kyohei. And obviously he has a big sponsors, right? He's driving Maserati and, but he told me how much he's making in Rising, which is not that much. So obviously, all the money he's making, living in nice places, and $250,000 cars, and he's actually apparently going to Brazil to train with a fight camp with Pitbull to prepare for his fight. So, and those things are all paid by his sponsors. So, like I mentioned on Shinju, Makoto's sponsorship and stuff like that, the Japanese sponsors pay very well, compared to American sponsors, and not only paying the fee. They will be gladly pick up a tab to go them to train. So they one sponsor is paying for plane, one sponsor is paying for hotel, that type of stuff, And this is something very, very interesting. They told me most of Hagiwara's sponsors, or like Mikuru sponsors, or even Hiramoto sponsors, all these guys used to be somehow delinquent back then. On teenage days, they made a mistake. They're stupid. They got into trouble with law. So they all end up opening their own businesses because in the Japanese world, once you get to the detention center, whatever it is, you're not going to get a regular job, right? So
they're all hustlers, right? They all hustled their way and made their own businesses.
All these sponsors of these fighters are all used to be sort of like a delinquent, but very successful small, medium, or large business owners, and they're really into the same type of young guys who's trying to make it. You know what I mean? So they have this like a personal, emotional attached to these guys. So ex-delinquent / business owners in Japan is the huge driving force for a Japanese sponsorship market. It's very, very
Isn't Mikuru's like patron sponsor that lawyer? What's his name? Hori?
I think Mr. Hori is a decent lawyer or whatever. He's been doing the legal work for a long time. So I'm not a legal expert, but I think the reason why Mikuru is getting all this sponsorship is not because of Hori. I really think it's because of his popularity.
Most definitely.
I could see like
most definitely
business owners knocking on his door. Love to support the guy because he's actually, making a reality out of their dreams. Because they have that dreams. They wanted to be the best of the guys in the world or what they do. And they think Mikuru can achieve that.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you right now, on the record, if somebody in America is watching this, the sponsorship in Japan is almost amazing. I mean, I have a couple of sponsors who's bugging me. They are dying to spend money on my clients. Like for example, Naoki, he scratched, right, because of injury. So one of the sponsors, he calls like, "Shoot, do you need a new equipment?" Apparently, he saw this documentary by Ichiro. Ichiro spends millions of dollars as his own like stretch equipment, everything else in his own living room. So he's like,
well,
should I buy that for Naoki? I'm like, I don't think so, But they were like willing to spend like it's $250,000, $500,000. It doesn't matter,
I had a fighter once, a Japanese fighter once messaged me because they saw like one of those scam like medicine websites.
Yeah.
And it was like this. They say that Tom Brady uses this. I want to use it too. And I'm like, I don't think Tom Brady actually uses this. I don't think you should buy this. Like this seems super sketchy.
Right. Super sketchy. Now let's talk about sketchy sponsor. Now this is a good thing.
But now that you said that was funny because I was kind of reviewing some of the incidents or scandals that Rising's been involved with, and naturally,
I feel bad for this one. I mean, it's not like it's their fault.
I looked back at the Dice Team issue,
right,
and I saw an old MMA fighting article where they interviewed you, and you were like, "Yeah, I looked into it, and it looked like they were clearly doing sketchy stuff."
Right. I mean, they couldn't explain what they do because I always ask them, "So, what's your core business?" Not because of the fact that I want to find out what they do, but because I want to propose them with a good sponsorship package.
Well, I mean, the guy from the Dice Team the allegations about him were on TV a year before he was arrested.
Exactly.
And so my thing now is, I know he never officially sponsored Rising, but he sponsored a bunch of fighters. My thing is, did Rising not learn from this? Are they not like looking into the sponsors, being, where's this money coming from? How does a woman who is a city councilor for a tiny city near Osaka have the money to become a major sponsor of Rising Trigger?
Right. So
do they not ask questions?
Yeah, let's recap this. What she did for those listeners.
I'll recap. So
right, she doesn't know about this. Right, go ahead.
Yeah. She's like a city councilor who, from what I can tell, kind of like there was like this thing a couple of years ago where an attractive woman became a city councilor somewhere. So people are like, oh, it's the time period for cute politicians.
Exactly. Right. So she was in the media a lot as that she was too beautiful to be a politician. Right.
Right. So this woman tried to copy that. So she kind of like released a photo book of pictures of herself and became a city councilor. She tried to become like a higher level politician, but never succeeded.
Right.
And
she then times never made it. Right. She lost in elections. Right.
And so what I understand about this current case is that she and 4 other people would go to hospitals. They'd meet with hospital officials and like retirement homes or care facilities and say, we can help you get COVID relief loan. And then they would help them get the loan, and they would take I feel like they would take a part of it as their fee.
Right.
They were like, oh, here's our fee for us helping you get this loan. But I think it was a very large number. Like I think I read it was like half. Right. Like they're taking like 50%.
Right.
And so blatantly they were like committing fraud and all these things to get this money.
I think the key point here is this: she's saying she's taking this fee because if you go through with me, you don't have to pay back this loan.
That's what she said. Yeah,
to believe that, right?
She said these were 0 interest, non-secured loans.
Exactly.
Which means
right.
If you default on the loan, you don't owe anything. You never have to pay them back.
I mean, that would never happen in this world. Face it. Like for them to even believe that, it's stupid, right? All these victims.
And so then they were keeping all of the money in one of the guys, not her, someone else's like safety deposit box.
Exactly, right.
And she went to the bank, and they have video footage of this. They don't have it like in it, but they have her leaving, and she took like $1 million out of the guy's safety deposit box.
USD, right? USD worth of money, yeah.
And so that guy got pissed off, and since he's an idiot, he went to the police.
Exactly,
like,
this is the money they stole from the victim.
Yeah,
this is the money she might be on the book.
This idiot went to the police and was like, "Hey, I had all this stolen money in my bank account, and this person came and took it from me. And so that's how the police became aware of this scam that's going on. And
Yeah, that's just such a stupid. And I heard that. I guess what happened was they had some trouble between these four people, right? So she went out and got recruited another three new persons to try to execute another con scheme, and that's when she got caught.
it's also worth noting that she apparently was driving like very expensive cars.
Yeah, yellow
like Mercedes Benz.
Yeah,
and she became one of the major sponsors of the Trigger series.
exactly. Right.
It was like her and Shashan. She had like a consulting company called Potential.
Right.
All their website is the word potential. So there's like no description of what they do. It's just so sketchy.
Idea.
Yeah. And
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Then she is obsessed with Rising. She ran as part of their audition to become a round girl.
Yes, she did apply for Rising Girl, right?
Yeah, she wanted to be one of the Rising Girls. And then there's rumors going around that she was like dating or in some form of like sexual relationship with with Suzuki, the kickboxer that fought your former client. I mean, your current client, Ben Hitamoto. And then there's also like pictures of her hanging with a bunch of fighters on her Instagram page. So she's clearly a key sponsor and involved in the Trigger series.
Well, I know
and
for
the problem with this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the biggest problem with this is that with the Dice Team issue, that was not directly related to Rizin.
Yes.
This is directly related to Rizin. And if people, so you can speak to this as well. In Japan, they hold politicians to like a very high standard. And so if it comes to light that a corrupt politician was funneling stolen COVID relief funds into Rizin, that's going to be really, really bad news for the promotion.
It is, but I think she only financed the one Rising Trigger show. I know one is still bad enough, but people are already talking about, oh, maybe Rizin should give back that money and blah blah blah. But hey, I mean, I think Rizin is also a victim here. And I see your point that, oh, they don't check on sponsors and blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you on the record, even the top corporation in Japan, it's not like their background check is the best thing.
Well, let's see. What you're saying makes sense. I'm just saying that the way that the Japanese social media and the news is, they're not going to care about that. They're going to say that they should have done it.
Exactly, right.
Because they don't care about being realistic.
Exactly, they don't. Nobody cares about being realistic. It's about like attacking on Rising, right?
Yeah. So I do believe that there is some. I do believe that there is some credit to the idea that Rising has pissed some people off, because it seems like there are people that are actively trying to release negative stories about Rising all the time,
all over the place. Yeah,
especially this year. It's been kind of crazy,
well,
and I think someone is pissed off, and because just every month another thing is happening.
Yeah, I mean, there are still a problem about the past case. Remember about the money Mr. Sakakiba borrowed, not knowing it's the money coming from the Yakuza side. So that problem is not solved yet, And so I'm pretty sure he's dealing with that almost every day, And on top of this, I'm pretty sure the gang of people who wants to collect money from Sakakiba is doing something to distribute these bad press.
Well, he set a terrible precedent with that Mr. X and Mr. Y, where his initial response was to give the guy like the $40,000.
I know,
so now all of these journalists are like, oh, if we find bad news, maybe they'll just pay us to go away.
Yeah, but again, that's a black journalism. You really, a real journalist don't do that, right? So
I don't think there's a real I don't think because this says Friday, but I mean, a lot of these articles are coming up like in that Shukan Post or Friday, or a lot of these kind of gossip magazines. I think a lot of these journalists aren't the most respectable people.
No, and almost everybody who was involved in that is either ex-Yakuza or current Yakuza,
Did you see the weird response that Suzuki had to this article?
Right, exactly. So let's go back about that because Mika Yoshiba, who just got arrested, who's a former city councilor, she ain't Yakuza or anything like that. She was just a part of a con group who got a lot of money to waste. And she's 42 years old, but apparently she was very sexually active. And apparently, if she applied for Rising Girls audition, she probably is very confident about her looks, you know?
Yeah.
So she's probably.
Well, I mean, as I said, she released a photo book of just pictures of herself in sexy poses.
Exactly. So, and apparently she was living with Chihiro Suzuki, you know?
No, he denies it. That's alleged. He denies that they live together.
He denies that?
Yes. He released a 37-second video, which is hilariously short, where he says they were not dating, they did not live together, and he never received any money from her. And I'm going to say bullshit, bullshit, bullshit.
Yeah, I think
so. All three of his claims.
You know, the problem is that he should have done what like Horia did. You remember when he got caught being in that gay porn video? He admitted immediately. Oh, I made a mistake, and it was a time I didn't have money. Big deal, right? I mean, he should have come out and said that. I mean, he didn't know. It's not him.
All he said, exactly. All Suzuki's got to do is come out and be like, "Hey, look, she's hot. She gave me. She has a nice house.
Right.
And she took me out to eat and bought me stuff. I didn't know she was stealing it from COVID relief funds."
This on the record, she was pressing the matchmakers in Rizin too, so she had a lot of influence in matchmaking as well. So that's how Chihiro got a spot. And I'll tell you this on the record, I've heard some people telling me that that old lady is pushing this fighter. In our conversation, that old lady was her. You know, I'm like, oh, okay, that's the one again. And I'll tell you this on the record that if anybody has very interesting, if they want to check out the fight between Horie versus Uruka, my client. Right before that fight, this girl Yoshiba is in the ring and giving flowers to both fighters. Now to Uruka, little kid gives flower. To Horie, she gives a flower. After she gives a flower to Horie, she gives thumbs up and winks at Horie. So it's her type. So she sponsors or supports or push fighters that she likes, or these good-looking men.
I'll also add, I mean, I think it's either her Twitter, her Instagram profile. It says, if you want to fight in Rising, just let me know. So, I mean, she was making it very clear that she had influence.
That's what's annoying about the mentality of the Japanese sponsors, that you think, oh, I'm sponsoring you, so I'm politically powerful than you are, so I can make your fight happen, or I can influence matchmakers and blah, blah, blah. And that it really shouldn't be the right attitude for sponsors, right? I mean, but again, a lot of Japanese sponsor feels that way. You know, I'm giving you money, so I have something I want to say. You know?
Yeah.
And on top of that, I don't know if you realize that, but this girl Yoshiba, after she pulled out from Rising Girl, she posted a bunch of posts on Twitter saying that she herself would like to be the general manager of the Rising Girl division, and I'm gearing towards how clean this organization is, and they have no relationship with Yakuza, and blah blah blah. She posted all these posts on Twitter, declaring she's the general, manager or whatever that is. But none of us knew anything about it. Like who the hell cares what she says, right?
I don't know how accurate these are, but I did see some posts from people that worked with her in the government, and they kind of said that she's not that bright, that she just used her looks to get elected, essentially, is what they were saying. Because I saw something. She's been on a health leave for like several months.
Exactly, several months, but she was in Rizin, right? Or something like that. She
was like, oh, I'm too sick to work for the government, but I'll be at every Rising event. So she was on like a paid leave of absence or something.
Hey, listen, but Japanese politics is totally a third rate. I don't really have a faith in that Japanese politics. I mean, we have a governor who got busted by sleeping with underage girls, and we have, a guy. Right. I mean, I don't want to mention names here, but, there's things like that happens all the time. Some real idea about politics,
My recent personal favorite was the Tokyo guy who told everyone to stay home during the quarantine and not go out. Mm-hmm. And then the next day he was caught at a brothel with a bunch of prostitutes, and they interviewed all the prostitutes, and they were like, oh, he was really hands-on. He was not social distancing at all during his entire stay.
I'm telling you, the Japanese politician, somebody can write a comedy about them. Some of the scandals they go through is just unbelievable. And especially about that guy, what's his name? That he won the election by not even being in Japan. That guy who bust all these scandals about the famous guy, and he's in like Abu Dhabi or Dubai or something like that. And he only does the election thing through YouTube's, and he won elections. The guy is like nobody. He has no political philosophy, none of that.
Not get too deep into politics, but I mean, the voting population in Japan is like tiny. Like, what do you think? Like less than 10% of the population votes. It's such a
Yeah, but the fact that that guy won the election, I mean, it clearly tells that these younger generations are voting now, right? I mean, he only did campaign on YouTube. Remember, the Japanese politics is known to be very costly. To any campaigns for elections and everything else, it's very, very expensive compared to what we see in the States. But because they have the office and they have the car running around, posters, all kinds of stuff.
I hate those cars so much.
Right, but this guy did nothing. He only did YouTube and won election. So
interesting.
So it's very weird, But anyway, so this
kind of related to Yoshiba it's worth noting.
Mm-hmm.
She was a Trigger sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about it in the article as well. Trigger's other major sponsor, Shashan, Spashan,
super cool
also had a bunch of problems.
Yeah, they're being accused of the bunch of ex-employee of harassment and violence on the workplace and blah blah blah. So I know.
Did you see the fraud claims against them?
Yeah, I saw that too.
That cracked me up. So those that don't know, it's like the typical example where they had 3 different types of a product,
right?
And they were like, this one has 78% of this nice ingredient. This is 79. This is 80. They all had the same. They all had 40%. All of them were exactly the same, and they were just selling them for different prices.
Exactly, right. So I'm telling you, and I told you some interesting story about Trigger. The reason why Trigger started because they wanted to do different series, cage shows, and stuff like that. But also another reason is that because through Mayweather Tenshin fight, former promoter president of K1, Mr. Tanikawa, started getting involved. So Tanikawa's role was to reach out to old K1 sponsors to see if they want to sponsor the Rizin shows. So Trigger shows were sponsored by old sponsors of K1 who brought in by Mr. Tanikawa. So those are the sponsors. Now both bust. Now some people on the internet are saying, "Oh, it's Tanikawa's fault," and blah blah blah. But I don't think so. He was trying to help Rizin, but just ended up being the company ended up being a problem. Right.
Especially the Spashan. Spashan.
Yeah, there's nothing to do with Rizin.
Didn't do anything like criminal. No. Whereas,
yeah. I mean, it happens on a lot of Japanese corporations. It's like a so-called black corporation, right? Basically.
And in Rizin's defense with the Yoshiba lady, she might have just looked like a super wealthy lady that just wanted to be a private sponsor through her promotion. Yeah.
Right. Kanimachi is the word. It's coming from the sumo world. It's been around in Japanese fight world for a long time. Kanimachi means those are the guys who's actually giving them support. It's not about return on investment. It's not about putting a logo on the shorts or none of that. It's about the pure support, and that's the culture that's being exists, right? So,
because if you watch enough Rising shows, you'll be like, oh, that guy's always in the front row. That guy is always in the front row.
Right.
There are people that are just quiet who single-handedly sponsor tons of money to the promotion. Maybe they just thought she was one of them.
Right, and she was always on the front row, and I think some fans caught her sitting with Mr. Chihiro Suzuki, right, watching some Rising shows and stuff like that. So, I mean, what's wrong with hanging out with sponsors, right? I mean, he should not have denied it,
He should have nothing to blame. It was like, hey, a hot old lady wanted to help my fighting career. What am I supposed to do? Say no?
Exactly, right. And we thought she's an ex-city councilman, so I mean, a lot of people think that's legit, right? I mean, that's how she used her, credibility to cheat people. So, but it's too bad. So, Rizin now having a little bit of issues with now sponsors. Now, I think the Trigger show is going to be discontinued because I don't think they'll be able to do it without a sponsor.
Do you think it'll be officially discontinued, or they'll just never bring it up again?
They'll never just bring it up again, and they might even actually be looking for another sponsor to pick up a Trigger anyway. So right now, if I was Sakuba, I would be doing the same thing. What's the point of announcing that it's not going to continue? Right? I mean, they might
So-
pick up the sponsor.
So in the past, I believe you said the Trigger series is kind of like this well-crafted plan where they're making enough money from the sponsors for the events to pay for the whole events almost, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Just like what they're doing is like they're selling the entire show. Just like how UFC did on their first, I mean, it's not the first Zuffa owned UFC show in Japan. They sold the entire show to Dentsu, which is like an ad agency in Japan.
Right.
So they take zero risk. So Dentsu paid some amount of money to UFC, and Dentsu took over, and they sold the broadcasting deals and sponsorships and tickets and all kinds of stuff to try to make that money and collect the profit. So it's the same kind of business model. So for Trigger shows, they sold it to this per show. One sponsor buys the entire thing, and they will do all the operations in terms of ticketing and of course, the Rizin will help them marketing and everything else, but sponsorship and tickets and all these incomes are going to that one major sponsor who bought the show.
It's a smart strategy. Hopefully
it is a smart strategy. From Rizin's point of view, it's zero risk. Yeah. All they have to do is deliver fights and fighters and the show. They will make a set amount of profit. So it's actually a very good business model. So it was working until the Super Collection got into trouble, which has nothing to do with Rizin. So this Yoshiba, apparently she only fully sponsored the one event, so it's only one event. There's much you could do, right? I mean, yeah. And I don't think you're lawyers. Is there any law in Japan where you have to give back that money if you find out it's coming from the criminal activities?
Not that I know, but I think the issue would be, it's just even giving back the money, I think the damage has already been done.
It is, yeah. Damage is already done.
So just move on.
Move on, but the problem about the Japanese culture is like people tend to follow the trend. And when you look at right, everybody looks at the right. So right now, major corporate sponsors are not going to step into, sponsor Rizin unless they're really, really into it. And another sponsor you could think of is Yogibo, right? Because they're sponsoring F1 racing and stuff like that. So apparently they're doing well. They got the money. And they sponsor Tenshin Takeru show and stuff like that. So apparently Rizin is still in communication with the Yogibo. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to Yogibo, try to convince them to sponsor the Trigger show.
I'm still convinced that they gave Yogibo a hell of a deal to sponsor the Takeru fight because they were desperate to get somebody once they lost the Fuji TV deal.
I agree, right. But the problem is that Yogibo is the sponsor they brought in by this Mr. Is that Y or whoever that is, that article?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you right
Mr. Y is the one that brought in Yogibo.
Not the Y. Who is that guy in the article who works for Rizin who doesn't own business card?
Mr. Y.
Yeah, is that the one? Okay, so he's the one who brought
I believe Mr. X is the journalist and Mr. Y is the guy that has special friends in dark places.
That works for a dark consultant for Rizin, right? Yeah, he's the guy. He brought in Yogibo. So you have to go through with him to get Yogibo back in. So I don't know. That may be an issue too, right? So
at this point, everyone already knows he exists. Might as well keep using him.
That's the one thing. It's it's a peculiar thing about the Japanese businesses. It's not only the fight business, entertainment business, and I mean you see a lot of yakuza or former yakuza sitting on very high position as a part of the deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel bad for Sakakibara, but again, hey, once you get associated with that part of the world, you can never get out of it anyway.
Nope.
I mean, we all know
that. You also shouldn't talk about that kind of stuff over the phone where people are recording
it. Well, that's why he should be watching Goodfellas. Remember that guy, Paulie? He never. He tell guys to go to the outside of the payphone, and they go these calls.
I mean, what is it they say in law school? Don't write it down if you can say it, and don't say it unless you have to.
Yeah, exactly. So that's too bad for him, but I think Rizin will continue, and I mean,
what if Sakakibara did watch those mob movies and he started talking like them? It's like he may or may not. He doesn't think everything. It's just like may or may not. Word sentences are using.
But I think at this point, I think we all listen to that tapes. It's out on the internet, right? Not only that you can post, there's a couple small journalist site that they're posting all these tapes. Obviously, right? It's coming from the other side. I don't think Sakakibara has a full control of the situation. Sounds like there are a lot of people he has to go through the red tapes to even do anything, right?
Yeah.
So he ain't Dana White or Ariel Emmanuel. He ain't calling shots. I think that's the problem.
Yeah. And for people to act like that's not the case, they're living in a fantasy world.
They are living in a fantasy world.
Because that's the way it works. And as you've said many times, that's the way that the entire Japanese entertainment industry works.
Right. But here's what it is, though. Let's really look at, let's say, Bellator. They were in red for like over 10 years. And then once they signed with DAZN Showtime, finally they became on the plus side, right? So for professional sports league to be established like that in that level, you will need that kind of a time, and you need that substantial sponsors or owners or whoever can support you through those first 10, 15 years. And that's what you need for the Japanese MMA. This is not a time anymore for a one-man shop to try to run and compete against a public company. You know what I mean, think about it. This is the guy who cannot go to the bank and ask for loans. Therefore, that's why he goes and borrow money from small, medium business owners. You're not going to compete against a public company like UFC or Viacom or Bellator.
Exactly. I was going to say, like Viacom or Bellator.
Right. Or even PFL, who has a pretty solid hedge fund funding that, project. Even the one championship, the approach is correct. I think Chatterley's approach is correct, that he needs those big funds, right? It's like a startup companies. You need that to establish professional sports league. So
do you think there's ever going to be a day, though, that one of the giant Japanese companies does sponsor MMA?
I think at this point, the only possibility has to be the Abema. I mean, they already bought a couple of professional promotions, they're.
But I was thinking even bigger. Like, you don't think there'll ever be a day where, like, Mitsubishi or Toyota is like, we're getting in the MMA game? Or Rakuten.
Big company like Abema buys in and get rid of all this current staff, give them a good severance pay and say goodbye and bring in all these experts and run the company properly. And I'm pretty sure for the next 10, 15 years, they're still going to fail. They're going to trial and errors. By then, 10, 50 years down the road, if they do that, I think the sports will be established as a real sports. So by then, I think they will attract Mitsubishi or Sony if they can get to that point. Right? But you have to have that backup. You're not going to be able to achieve that as like a mom and pop shop. That's what it is, Rising. I mean,
you're not going to be able to achieve that with the current, aura surrounding it.
Exactly. And the bottom line is this. But other side of the coin, I have to give Rising guys a big credit, because even the last show, I wanted to go there, but I couldn't make it for my several reasons. So Tiago, who's a partner of mine, went there to take care of Jessica and everything.
Saw him in the pro wrestling mask during her entrance.
Exactly. And he's been to many, many Japanese shows, obviously. But because of pandemic and stuff like that, none of us were able to go to Japan. So this is the first time he went to a Japanese show for like 3-4 years. Then he realized that. What a great show Rising put up. And look at the number of staff they're working. It's probably like 10 people full-time. But for those fans who doesn't know anything about MMA, watching MMA event for the first time, they might even think Rising show looks better than UFC, right?
No, I mean, I'm going to say if you go to the event in person, they put on a hell of a show.
Exactly. They put on a hell of a show for 10 full-time staff, opposed to UFC. How many hundreds of full-time staff they have?
Yeah.
Sure, it's a totally different ball game, so I can't compare that. The point is that Rizin do put up a very good shows, and they could turn out to be a very good brand if it's under the right people's hand. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they cannot be borrowing money every shows to try to, to make ends meet. It just doesn't work that way. You have to have a yearly budget, and budget has to be allocated. And it's the common sense. And that's not happening. That's why Sakakibara is going out knocking on doors on those business owners borrowing money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and pay back in a couple months with a big interest on it. It makes zero sense to me. But why doesn't he do that? Because he has no other way to get the funding.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so it's and you mentioned the building, the Rising is going to be demolished, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't the shop, the entire building it was in, is being demolished, is what I heard. So it's not like they're being kicked out of the building or something.
Right. So they're probably going to look for another property, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're not like being kicked out. So it's not like a sign of downfall, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Anyway, so what's the next topic? I'm sorry, I don't have glasses with me, so there's not much I can type. But
let me check. I know you wanted to talk about some of the Japanese fighters fighting abroad.
Oh yeah, that's right. That recent fall of the Japanese fighters in overseas. Well, let's talk about that because we had a LFA. We had a Mr. Kawana and Mr. Tanaka fought in LFA. They both lost, followed by Takashi Sato, who got knocked out in 44 seconds. Were you able to watch any of those fights?
I saw the Sato fight. I don't watch LFA.
Right.
I mean, I'd love to watch LFA. I just don't have unlimited time.
Right, exactly, right. But now, in terms of Sato fight, you watched that on UFC Fight Pass?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, see, like
it's pretty cheap in Japan. It's only like $10 a month, and you get to watch everything.
Right, you get to watch everything, including pay-per-view shows, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, I feel stupid paying those big pay-per-view prices in the US.
All you gotta do is get a VPN.
Oh, that's true. They may do. Does it work? Because
I don't know. I've never tried.
Yeah, pretty hard on that. Even though the best VPN you can get, they'll block it somehow. But anyway, so Japanese fighters in US. Of course, I could see Sato being insistent on UFC. Fine. Yeah. Now, Anthony Pettis, who just lost on the last PFL fight, made a very interesting comment, he said that many fighters are addicted, quote unquote, addicted to UFC, and they're not really looking their potentials on the market. They think about the spotlight and the fancy life you get once you get to UFC. They're making illusions about it, and it's not like that. So you really have to go for what your value is, and that kind of theory sort of applies to Sato too, because he had to sit out for over a year waiting for his next contract with the UFC. And during that time, I had the offer from PFL. It was a very good offer for him to take, but he was basically insistent on the UFC. Now,
interesting.
Another interesting fact is Tanaka. He was a ex-UFC fighter, and he got released. Now he's one of the top bantamweights in Japan, so I know he had a lot of offer from Rizin to fight in that show for very good money and blah blah blah. But for some reason, he insists that he wants to go to UFC, and he feels getting good wins in Rizin versus getting good wins in LFA. He thinks the LFA is a better way to go, which I totally disagree. Considering the fact that Tanaka had to pay for his own visa, had to pay for his own plane to get there. And he was fighting for like 1750 show for 1750 to win. So he took a big loss taking fight in LFA. Now, we had to talk about that because me, Sato, and his corner man from Sanford were watching that fight, eating dinner. And we're like, so why does he insist on LFA? There's a Titan, there's a Fury, there's a CFFC. There's a lot of shows in States. And I explained to him, but a lot of fighters in Japan feels LFA is the best way to get to UFC. And everybody's reaction was like, why? Like, why? Who cares? Anywhere you go, it's a feeder show. You go and fight the best guys, you get a good record, you make it to the UFC. Who cares what promotion you fight for? But it's like a Japanese mentality. Like, they feel LFA is sort of like a subsidiary of UFC. So they feel it's a better shot.
Is that just because it's on Fight Pass?
No, but you got to understand Showtime FC, A1, Titan, CFFC.
I'm wondering why they're focusing exclusively on LFA. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I have one reason why. That's because MMA Planet covers LFA the most. Okay. I don't blame Manabu, which I'm going to see him in a couple of days because he's going to be in Wisconsin with me. But you know how he's the only journalist in Japan who follows outside Japan promotions, right? But he's only doing this by himself, so he's got limited time, so he can't cover everything. So he covers LFA. So people think, it's LFA. That's the one. That's the place you have to go if you want to go to UFC. But not anymore. I mean, right? The many other shows, and also now there's a Road to UFC Asia, and there's a Contender Series that Japanese can get in. So I think there's a lot of different route, but I think it's the Japanese people's mentality that they like the set route, the clear path.
Yeah, but the problem is that they're almost always working on like old information,
right?
Like no longer is relevant, and I don't know why. Yeah. I feel like if you fought for any promotion and you just got a bunch of dominant wins, the UFC is going to pay attention, or at least give you consideration.
That's what I try to explain to everybody, but there's always a set of people in Japan who feels they know everything, and they lecture fighters. This is the way it's supposed to be. That's the way. That's it. It's just totally wrong, you know.
I'll tell you.
You know.
I'll tell you what. If you are in a promotion and you're doing well, there's a good chance the UFC knows about it.
Oh yeah,
based on my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because I cover a bunch of deep shows and pancrase shows, I actually had someone who works for the UFC
reaching out to you, right?
They reach out to me and they go, I want to talk to the management for these 4 fighters.
Right.
And so like they're aware of what's going on. And what I've discovered, I mean, the UFC is so global now, they essentially have an Asian office.
They do.
And it's like those people are scouting and paying attention to the Asian MMA scene. And if there's someone of interest or what they do is sometimes they message me and they're like, who should I be paying attention to? And I'll be like, these are the young people to pay attention to.
Exactly. So yes, it's totally true because within the organization, besides the matchmaker, they're constantly somebody scouting and giving a word to the matchmaker, recommending to Sean and Mick. But the reality is this, Sean and Mick is amazing in the sense. Those 2 guys watches almost every fight in the world. So even though the UFC staff recommend, like, okay, what about this guy in Japan? The chances are Sean says, don't worry, I already know the manager. You know? Exactly. So it's the same case. The guy who asked, one of the guy the UFC Asia staff asked for was Yusaki Kinoshita, right? Yes, they were wondering about Kinoshita, but I was already in communication with Sean about him way before that. So it's like that case. So I will tell you this very, very interesting story. That Japanese fighters, some people thinks it's better to be in Vegas so you can meet them. So that clear example is.
I feel like you're speaking directly about certain people that are currently in Vegas.
Miss Rin Nakai, who is there. But let me tell you a more interesting story. Actually, there's another Japanese bantamweight who recently went to Vegas. He has been trying to contact Sean through his managers or representative, whatever that is. He had no luck. So he actually came to me once, and I talked to him on the Zoom and explained to him that this is what you need to do. You know, you're in this age; it's going to be kind of hard. So, you have to think about the plan B, plan C, blah blah blah. But this kid doesn't listen. So you know what he did? He's like, "All right, I'm going to go and talk to UFC directly." So he made this little highlight video on on CD with all these nice, like music and everything on it.
He's like a high school baseball player sending his resume to school.
He physically went to Vegas and tried to meet the matchmaker, and he failed to do so. So the problem is this. I will tell you this on the record for all these young fighters. If you're a matchmaker, the first thing you don't want to see is a highlight. Who cares about highlight reels? You want to see the whole fight.
It's out of context.
Exactly. Right. It doesn't tell
anyone can look good for 1 second during a fight.
Exactly. Right. So it's stupidity. And in this day and age, all you have to do is just send them a link to the YouTube where your fights are uploaded. Or if it's prohibited, you can always upload it privately, right? And just send that link. That's all we do. So it's ridiculous to even go all the way out there, and try to meet them. I mean, if they're not interested, if they're not returning your email, they're not going to meet you.
I don't know if it's a Japanese thing, but I've worked in the Japanese IT industry, and I have heard about like the CEOs of small Japanese IT companies going to Silicon Valley and trying to meet people at Apple, just getting met by police officers and security guards outside. Like, you're not getting in. There's a gift shop across the street. So maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know.
It's also a cultural thing, but it's also opposed to people around that person that he's really trying hard. And it's actually a very common story. Like, for example, my idol, Mr. Eikichi Yazawa, when he came to Tokyo, he didn't know what to do. The first thing he did, he wanted to be rock and roll. So he went to Yokosuka military base and wanted to try to get a job and told him to go home. Security told him to go home. Late legendary actor Mr. Yusaku Matsuda, when he came to Tokyo, he wanted to be a big actor. So what he did, he went to Akira Kurosawa's house, knocked on his door, said, "I want to be a disciple." He sat on the front of the house for 3 straight days, and Kurosawa told him to go home. And he says, "I'll never be on your movies." He yelled at them, and he just went out. So it's like a Japanese thing, but it never works. Never works.
Yeah.
Except the Shumetov brothers.
For them, it worked once, and then they were never brought back again.
Right. But the Japanese like to do that. Fine. And it's just all under their own satisfaction. And I think it's almost the same case where it's sad by Miss Rin Nakai in Vegas, because I'm telling you,
it looks like she's getting some good training in it, extreme culture. And I saw that she said she trained with Misha Tate, and then I think she also rolled with Roxanne a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And because Roxanne speaks Japanese, that worked out well for her.
She's super nice. I'm pretty sure she helped her out, right?
Yeah. But did you like how they complained about having to get a car? I mean, now they have to Uber everywhere in Vegas. Like, what they think was going to happen?
I mean, obviously they haven't done any research, right? And they're wasting sponsors' money, obviously, by doing so. You know.
See, it'd be one thing if they're from Tokyo, but they're from a rural island where they drive. So it's not like they're used to public transportation and expected Vegas to have public transportation. So I'm just kind of confused by what they expected.
You know, as you know, by living in Japan is highly centralized. So almost everything happens from Tokyo, right? So I was talking to Kinoshita and Hagiwara in Vegas, and they said, "Oh, our first goal was get to Tokyo." So even the MMA world, fighting in Osaka show doesn't make it. So once you step up to the Tokyo show, you made it, kind of stuff, you know. So everything is really looking towards Tokyo.
That's okay for normal people, but Rin Nakai was taking fights in Nagoya for heat.
I know. But here's what it is. My point is this. So even Osaka people feel that way, which is probably the 3rd largest city in Japan, right? Now think about the rural part, which is she's in Ehime Prefecture in Shikoku Island, which is really, really boony side. So if people in Osaka still feels Tokyo is it, and if you have to go Tokyo, so from her point of view, Tokyo is a big thing. And everything outside that rural part is so hard. So everything on her Twitter is about appealing to the sponsors or fans that she's trying so hard. Everything's so difficult. But I'm overcoming all these obstacles. That's why I have to walk hours to find a connection flight. Hours to find the baggage counter. You know, that person, hours. I mean, in Honolulu airport, you can go walk one side to the other side in less than 30 minutes. So what the hell is she talking about, like walking for hours? But that's the deal that she's doing, or her husband is doing, obviously, right? So and I feel bad.
Did you see those pictures? Did you see those pictures of her with the UFC strawweights? I mean, she looks tiny next to strawweights.
Yeah,
what
I know.
weight does she think she's gonna fight in the UFC at?
She should cut down the strawweight, and she should make sure she can pass the drug test too. I don't know what steroid, not steroid, but what supplements or anything she's taking. They need to go oversee everything to make sure. Yeah. But more than anything, I feel kind of bad that she's in Vegas now, obviously training at the Extreme Couture. She should have access to some managers, and she's not getting it, right? I mean, I know for the fact some managers train. So like when you go to Syndicate, you bump into Daniel. Or Extreme Couture, I'm pretty sure you don't bump into a guy like Jason. So they could easily talk to those managers, but it's not happening, it seems like.
Am I naive, or if she had maintained a close relationship with either Pancrase or Deep, I feel like either one of those promotions would have happily set her up with a manager that they know in Vegas. But since she burned all of those bridges, she has no support and is unable to meet managers.
I'll tell you this on the record. Both Pancrase and Deep has approached me to take care of her, and I rejected. And I actually did communicate with Wild Usami before she first signed with UFC. After a couple of emails in communication, I decided not to take that because of the risk management aspect. So, I mean, yes, to answer your question, those promotions are always trying to recommend the managements to the fighters so they can guide her to the right path in terms of career.
Right.
So after I say no, I'm pretty sure they have approached many managements. And if it's not happening, either management say no or they say no. Right? I mean, and I'll be honest with you. in terms of American management, even though they before sign any fighters, sometimes they do talk to matchmakers, of course, just to feel out to see if there's even possibility. So even it's worth it to sign these fighters, right?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure she tried to approach somebody, and that somebody probably did check with the UFC, see if they're interested. And they're probably not interested. So they're not even bothering signing her, I think is the case.
Well, she had that agent in Japan who I think has the super original name of like athlete management company or something. Like they have a very,
I mean, they handles entertainment part of Uruka in Japan, so I do deal with them too, and they're pretty legit, very good people.
What was I going to say? They are, I believe, are the management for Kana Asakura.
Exactly right. So
say what you will about Kana Asakura's last fight. I don't know if her management was involved, but she had some massive sponsors. She was sponsored by Kirin. Did you see that?
No.
I mean, Kirin is a giant company in Japan. Right. She was sponsored by TikTok before that.
I think
so they seem legitimate.
If it's a big company like Kirin, they probably came through Rizin. It's usually like that. And I don't know about TikTok and stuff like that, but all these, I would say, medium sponsors are through her management.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just using that as an example to say, like, Rin looked like she was with a legitimate management company.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't think, because all she talks about is the UFC, if you don't think they didn't reach out to the UFC and the UFC said no, and that's why she fired them, like, that's clearly what happened.
Exactly. Here's what it is, though. I mean, let's say, common sense, if you're a manager or a fighter, if you approach promotion, if they say no, the second thing you do is you ask why, right? Why?
You ask, like, what do we got to do to get you to change your mind?
Well, exactly. What do I have to do to change your mind? Right? Yeah. And of course, most of the managers like myself will write all kinds of points, like Shinju. The first 10 fights, he was 16 years old, so you can't, count that kind of stuff. Anyway, but the point is, I don't know what kind of communication they had, but they're not seeking a guidance. That's the problem. They're always seeking about some powerful figure. They can make things happen like this. And so the fact that they cut the management off, right? And they remember they announced that on Twitter that I'm free agent and blah, blah, blah. Now, once you do that, right, I would never take that fighter. I would never sign that fighter because that fighter, once they work with me, decide to leave me, they're going to announce that in public and make it sound like, oh, it's my fault. I know they didn't mean it that way, but that's a stupid move that they did, That just really scared most of the management, and I would never take it. Never,
It's also weird because now that I think about it more, I always got the impression that the only reason she had a manager is because Deep kind of pushed her to have a manager because Deep didn't want to deal with them directly. So that's probably why they ended that immediately. But
yeah, so they have to know that the manager's role and the responsibility of a manager, meaning there's certain things you have to let managers do their job. You can't be like bugging them with your philosophy, which is based on like zero knowledge, obviously, right? So, I mean, I'll tell you this right now, that I know this is not going to happen, that most of the managements, if they have to take it, the first condition they're going to give her is you're going to have to leave that husband. You come and join another team, work under them.
It'll never work because because if her current attitude is any indication, it's going to be, I refuse to fight for anybody but the UFC.
Right.
And no management's going to want to deal with someone that unflexible.
Right. It's a stupidity. She has to understand. She has to do certain things to get to UFC. You can't be just beating up a Japanese fighter and saying I'm good, because she's in a division where there's only like 2 other Japanese fighters in that division.
Yeah.
So she's got to have to compete. And back then the clear path was Invicta, right? And she didn't even.
Or she did the clear path. The clear path for a woman in Japan, the clear path was Pancrase.
Pancrase, right? But she screwed that up.
Yeah, she screwed that up.
Right. And it's her husband who screwed that up. You know why they had a big problem, right? They had this.
She wore a thong and got a cold. And
right.
blamed Pancrase.
Some PR event by Pancrase, and she was wearing the costume, and it was cold, so he got mad.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. So I saw another funny picture. It's not involved with her, but did you see the picture of Kana Watanabe training in Hawaii with Angela Lee?
I saw that, yeah.
Angela Lee looks like she's almost as big as Kana Watanabe. So how's that atom weight champion?
I tell you this on the record too. I'm not gonna name names. Is one person has reached me looking for Angela Lee's sparring partner for fight camp, and I tell you this. You know what the offer was? Well, we'll set you up at the place to live. We'll pay you $100 per sparring. And I look at him and go like, so how often are they going to spar? Like 10 times a day? Kind of stuff. Like, are you going to get my client for like?
So essentially,
like,
isn't Hawaii also extremely expensive? Like $100, even if it's $100 a day, that's not going to cover that much. I don't feel like.
The problem here is this: this person was just try to do Angela a favor. I don't think Angela specifically to look for a sparring partner in that kind of condition. But the problem is
out potentially damaging her brand without her even knowing about it.
Stupidity for this guy to shooting emails offering that kind of stuff, and it's like Angela is a champion, and she's offering $100 to spar with her, in fight camp. I mean, you have to be a stupid to really think that's true, but he thinks he's trying to do her a favor, and that's stupid Japanese mentality. It's
offering to pay $100 is almost worse than offering like nothing.
Exactly. You're asking a legit fighter who is good enough to spar against Angela Lee to go Hawaii and lose money every single day.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're offering $100 per sparring, all right, what is she, like some kind of amateur, right? I mean, it's a damaging thing, but he's shooting that. He shot that email to all over the place. And I'm pretty sure
we know
we
know that Kana's getting paid more than that because her coach wouldn't allow her to go for less than that. Ueda demand more. He has more cut-off T-shirts to buy.
Kana is making very good money in Bellator, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, she may be the highest-paying Japanese woman at this point, right?
Yeah. Well, I was just laughing because she looks barely bigger than Angela Lee, who supposedly, without cutting weight, gets to 105 pounds. Which to me just seems absolutely insane.
It's 115 because she's atomweight, so it's 115.
I thought at the beginning of the week they had to weigh 105.
I don't.
And as the week they went on, they were allowed to weigh 115 by the end of the week. Because
I don't think
maybe
so.
Wrong.
Yeah, it's 115 all the way, and right now the hydration.
Because the daily weigh-in numbers change, right?
No, I think daily number is same, but the dehydration test happens 3 times a week to make sure. Right, but now the hydration test became only once a week instead of 3 times, so it became a little, lenient in that sense,
Yeah. You said the dehydration test became less frequent.
Yeah, it's once.
That's because everybody was failing it. Instead of fixing it, they're just getting rid of it.
And the bottom line is that there are a bunch of guys who was cutting weight, the water cut, did the bath and sauna and stuff like that. So they were dehydrating themselves and they were passing the test. So.
Speaking of one championship, we don't normally speak about them. What do you think about their press conference in California and how they're going to Amazon Prime now?
Well, I mean, I know they're in Amazon Prime, and I think it's starting from October. I think.
Yeah.
They're trying to put up a card together geared towards the U.S. audience.
Does this remind you just of their TNT attempt, or do you think it'll be different?
I think it's going to be, I hope it's not same as a TNT attempt, but I can tell this right now. If they're really geared towards October, they should be doing big promotion already by now, right?
Yeah.
It's already August. Are we seeing anything?
No.
I mean, and I hate to say this.
They have competing for eyes on Amazon Prime. Like they're being buried under so much content.
Exactly. So much content. And they're not exactly known for sports content. Yeah, sure. Right. From Japanese audience from point of view, because they have the boxing match for Murata, so they feel okay, that's a good platform. It is a good platform, but not necessarily for the sports, especially in the States. I mean, there's so much sports in this country. I can't even count the platforms. There's so many ways to see so many sports. So they will get back, I think, with this kind of promotions. And the bottom line is this: I know for the fact Ong is not getting fight. I know for the fact Eddie is training in Sanford. I know for the fact that Okami is not sure I'm getting fight in October. I was told he's getting fight, but we'll see. No about agreement yet. So how many of their fighters on the roster that's appealing to North America? Right?
I think I think the only people I remember at the press conference were like Stamp and Demetrius Johnson. But DJ was never a big draw. I mean, I like DJ, but he was never a big draw. So I mean,
DJ's
can't count on him.
Fantastic person. He's a great fighter.
No, he's wonderful. He got screwed just for some reason. He doesn't have that X factor.
Exactly. He didn't have that Conor McGregor factor, I bet.
Yeah.
If he was like Conor McGregor, it doesn't matter if he's 125 or 155. He would be making the same kind of wave as Conor did. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, they really, unless they go up and sign somebody big name, they really don't have that huge attraction towards North American market. So I really don't know, because if they're launching in October, they should be doing huge promotion right after another right now, but they're not doing it. So. But I always say on the record, I want every promotions to be successful. So I wish they can be more active, because I don't know what's going on in each division at all at this point in the championship.
I also like it when promotions try different things. It's like a nice testing phase, and who knows? Amazon Prime might be a wonderful platform for MMA.
Right.
And we can thank one championship for trying it out.
And you have to look at their kickboxing division too. They pretty much
the kickboxing is the best in the world. Everyone agrees.
Yeah, it's the best in the world. So I don't know why they're pushing that. I don't know why they're not pushing that.
Before we end, I have one completely unrelated news story. Did you see that Kota Miura is having an exhibition fight with Buakaw?
Yes. And why is he so popular in Indonesia, whatever that is? He has like
his social media exploded.
Right, why?
And it is almost all Vietnamese and Thai women.
Okay.
Vietnamese and Thai women love Kota Miura. So when I saw he was fighting Buakaw in Thailand, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense.
Right. So I guess they're real people then, because I won't name names, but some of the Japanese celebrities, they're 1/3 of the followers are from Indonesia. So it's obviously a bot kind of stuff,
No, I think Kota Miura, because I remember, because some of One Championships Thai fighters like Stamp Fairtex, they were posting videos of Kota Miura on their TikToks. So I think a lot of the people think he's pretty hot down there. I sound like an old man. He has a lot of female admirers in Southeast Asia, it looks like.
Female and also even male too. Who knows, right?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Exactly.
But dude, Buakaw looks jacked. If Buakaw wants to beat the crap out of Kota Miura in a kickboxing match, I feel like it's going to happen.
That's exhibition, right? And I think Buakaw is going to fight bare knuckle soon too. So
yeah, so Kota Miura better hope that Buakaw is in a kind mood going into that fight.
But I also would love to find out how much he's getting for this exhibition. With that kind of follower.
Also, I know that I think the promotion or Rizin got upset because I think the graphic of him fighting Buakaw got leaked before the Rizin event.
Oh, really?
And I think Rizin got upset about it and asked people to take it down because they didn't want him to be announcing he had a fight scheduled so soon after the Rizin show.
Hey, listen, this has been going on for, like, as far as I know, like 30 years. We are confirming, penciling fights. Don't put the graphic on the internet, but the internet group of their promotion doesn't realize that they put that on the internet and they get upset. I mean, when are we going to learn? We've been doing this for 30 years.
If you get upset about it, you're just gonna make it real. They're gonna be like, oh, they got real. It's real.
Well, don't even confirm that to make sure. Okay. Yeah, I mean.
Question for you: do you think Rizin is getting a cut of this? Kota Miura reeks of a fighter under a Rizin contract.
Right. So I wouldn't be surprised because they could make the case, say, hey, listen, you're under the contract, but I'll let you do it and I'll do the other bookings and make sure everything's okay. So give me the percentage, blah, blah, blah. So Rizin serves as a sort of like a management.
Yeah. And then next thing you know, we have like a nice 42-year-old city councilor from Bangkok who comes over to sponsor Rising Trigger and only have Kota Miura on the shows.
Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, that could happen, right? I mean, but I hope that one person is more a legit government connected or hedge fund connected person who can really bring in a legitimate investment,
The Kota Miura story is just so nuts. He's got so popular so fast, and now he's fighting Buakaw. Like,
Charlie, here's one thing about it. Sure, he has a huge follower. He got so big, so fast, so popular. But a fan or regular citizen living in the States, we don't feel that at all. So right now we're in an era where we pick our own news to read, right?
Right,
So
exactly.
if you're not willing to see that part of it, you don't know anything. And because I realized that even the match 2022, like within our circle, we're oh my gosh, what a huge event and blah blah blah. But I realized that once you step outside this fight fan circle, nobody knew. Really,
Well, I mean, that's the whole. I mean, isn't people saying that? It's like there's no movie stars, there's no celebrities anymore, because everyone's in their own. They pick what they want to watch. So they're very hyper focused on similar things.
Exactly. So I mean, that's why the Mikuru fan will be only watching Mikuru. So anything that anybody else said and outside the Mikuru, unless they mention Mikuru or say something bad about him, they wouldn't care, right?
You know who I feel bad for is Kotomiyo's Brazilian opponent, who's now been brought over to Japan twice to fight him. Yeah, he keeps getting paid, so he can't be too upset.
And he's getting a free Japanese tour. As a tour.
It's a free Japanese tour, and they pay him each time. So
right. So I mean, stay in a nice hotel. What the heck? I mean, and he's not in the same level that where he gets booked the international show yet. So he's getting good experience.
Yeah.
Right. So that's good for him.
Yeah.
All right. So let's finish this up because we talked for 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's a long episode today.
Okay. All right. So we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Perfect. See you then.
I see you later.
Have a good day.
You too.